Hi, I'm Mallory and welcome to Mallory in the Library, or welcome back if you have joined us before. Today we're going to read some stories about dancing. I know that when we're stuck inside it can be really hard to find the space and time to move our bodies, and so I wanted to share some stories that would help inspire everyone to get moving and to share being joyful through dance. So the first book I'm going to read is a special story called Jingle Dancer, and this special dress is called a jingle dress. Many groups of Indigenous people in Canada celebrate festivals where they wear this dress and dance with this dress, and so we're going to learn a little bit about what that is. So this book is called Jingle Dancer. It's by Cynthia Littich Smith, and it's illustrated by Cornelius Van Wright and Ying-Hua Hu. And she says, "To my great aunt Anne, Mrs. Anne Arnold." And then the illustrators say, "To jingle dancers." Tink, 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 sing cone-shaped jingles sewn to Grandma Wolf's dress. Every grandma bounce step brought clattering tinks as light blurred silver against jingles of tin. Jenna daydreamed at the kitchen table, tasting honey on fry bread, her heart beating to the brum, 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 brum of the powwow drum. As Moon kissed Sun goodnight, Jenna shifted her head on Grandma Wolf's shoulder. "I want to jingle dance too." "Next powwow you could dance girls," Grandma Wolf answered. "But we don't have enough time to mail order tins for rolling jingles." Again and again, Jenna watched a videotape of Grandma Wolf jingle dancing. When Grandma bounce-stepped on TV, Jenna bounce-stepped on the family room carpet. But Jenna's dress would not be able to sing. It needed 4 rows of jingles. As sun fetched morning, Jenna danced east to Great Aunt Sis's porch. Jenna's bounce steps crunched autumn leaves, but her steps didn't jingle. Once again, Great Aunt Sis told Jenna a Muskogee Creek story about Bat. Although other animals had said he was too small to make a difference, Bat won a ball game by flying high and catching a ball in his teeth. Rising sunlight reached through a window pane and flashed against, what was it, hanging in Aunt Sis's bedroom? Jingles on a dress, long, too long quiet. "May I borrow enough jingles to make a row?" Jenna asked, not wanting to take so many that Aunt Sis's dress would lose its voice. "You may," Aunt Sis answered, rubbing her calves. "My legs don't work so good anymore. Will you dance for me?" "I will," said Jenna, with a kiss on Aunt Sis's cheek. Now, Jenna's dress needed 3 more rows. As Sun arrived at mid-circle, Jenna skipped south to Mrs. Scott's brand new duplex. At Jenna's side, jingles clinked. Mrs. Scott led Jenna into the kitchen. Once again, Jenna rolled dough, and Mrs. Scott fried it. "May I borrow enough jingles to make a row?" Jenna asked, not wanting to take so many that Mrs. Scott's dress would lose its voice. "You may," Mrs. Scott answered, tossing flour with her apron. "At powwow, I'll be busy selling fry bread and Indian tacos. Will you dance for me?" "I will," said Jenna with a high five. Now, Jenna's dress needed 2 more rows. As Sun caught a glimpse of Moon, Jenna strolled west to Cousin Elizabeth's apartment. At Jenna's side, jingles clanked. Elizabeth had arrived home late from the law firm. Once again, Jenna helped Elizabeth carry her files. May I borrow enough jingles to make a row? Jenna asked, not wanting to take so many that Elizabeth's dress would lose its voice. You may, Elizabeth answered, burrowing through her messy closet for her jingle dress. This weekend I'm working on a big case and can't go to powwow. Will you dance for me? I will, said Jenna, clasping her cousin's hands. Now Jenna's dress needed one more row of jingles, but she didn't know which way to turn. As moon glowed pale, Jenna shuffled north to Grandma Wolf's. At Jenna's side, Jingles sat silent. High above, clouds wavered like worried ghosts. When Jenna tugged open the door, Jingles sang, tink, 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 tink. Grandma Wolf was jingle dancing on TV. Jenna breathed in every hey-ow of a powwow song. Her heart beat brum, 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 brum to the pounding of the drum. On family room carpet, beaded moccasins waited for Jenna's feet. She shucked off a sneaker and slipped on a moccasin that not long before had danced with Grandma Wolf. And Jenna knew where to find her fourth row. May I borrow enough jingles to make a row? Jenna asked, not wanting to take so many that Grandma Wolf's dress would lose its voice. You may, Grandma said with a hug, and now Jenna's dress could sing. Every night that week, Jenna helped Grandma Wolf sew on jingles and bring together the dance regalia. And every night, Jenna practiced her bounce steps. Brum, 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 sounded the drum at the powwow the next weekend. As light blurred silver, Jenna jingle danced for Great Aunt Sis, whose legs ached. For Elizabeth, who worked on her big case. And for Grandma Wolf, who warmed like the sun. Tink, tink, tink. So I really like that story because it shows us all the people who are important to us when we do different things like dancing. So this next one I'll read is about a festival that's coming up called the Chinese New Year. It is called Chin Chiang and the Dragon's Dance. It's written and illustrated by Ian Wallace. And it says, to my grandparents for their stories and songs. From the time Chin Chiang stood only as high as his grandfather's knees, he had dreamed of dancing the dragon's dance. Now, the first day of the year of the dragon had arrived, and his dream was to come true. Tonight he would dance with his grandfather. But instead of being excited, Chin Chiang was so scared he wanted to melt into his shoes. He knew he could never dance well enough to make grandfather proud of him. He stopped sweeping the floor of his family's shop and looked into the street where his mother and father were busy with other shopkeepers, hanging up paper lanterns shaped like animals, fish, and birds. It's time to practice our parts in the dragon's dance for the last time before the other dancers arrive, Chin Chiang. The afternoon is almost over, called Grandfather Wu from the bake room behind the shop. If I were a rabbit, I could run far away from here, Chin Chiang said to himself. But then Mama, Papa, and Grandfather really would be ashamed of me. So very slowly he walked into the bake room where Grandfather Wu stood waiting. He was wearing the splendid fierce dragon's head that he would put on again that night for the parade. Pick up the silk tail on the floor behind me, said his grandfather from inside the dragon's head, and together we will be the most magnificent dragon anyone has ever seen. Chin Chiang did as he was asked, but as his grandfather started to dance, Chin Chiang did not move. Grandfather can hide under the dragon's head, he whispered, but if I trip or fall, I have nowhere to hide. Everyone will say, there goes clumsy Chin Chiang. Grandfather Wu stopped dancing. A dragon must have a tail as well as a head, he said gently. Chin Chiang looked down at his shoes. I can't dance the dragon's dance, he said. You have trained for a long time, Chin Chiang. Tonight when you dance, you will bring tears of pride to your parents' eyes. Now come, join me, and practice just as we have practiced before. But when Chin Chiang tried to leap, he tripped, stumbled, and fell. Why had he ever thought he could dance the dragon's dance? Why had he ever wanted to? He was much too clumsy. He jumped up and ran, away from his grandfather, out of the shop, and into the market street. He stopped long enough to pick up a rabbit lantern, poke 2 holes for eyes, and shove it over his head. Look, look, it's the dragon's tail, called Mrs. Lau, dangling a speckled salmon for Chin Chiang to see. Tonight when you dance, the great dragon who lives in the clouds above the mountains will be honored, and next year he will fill our nets with beautiful fish like this. Chin Chiang turned away. And he will grow oranges of a size and color never seen before, called Mr. Koo. What they say is true, added Mr. Singh. The great dragon will bring prosperity and good fortune, if your dance pleases him. But Chin Chiang remembered what one of the other dancers had once told him. If the dance was clumsy, the great dragon would be angry. Then he might toss the fruit from the trees and flood the valley. It will all be my fault, thought Chin Chiang. Grandfather Wu will have to choose someone else to dance with him. He waited to hear no more and raced across the market street. Our fish, called Mrs. Lau. Our oranges, called Mr. Koo. Chin Chiang turned the corner. Our dance, said Grandfather Wu from the hallway. Looking out through the lantern, Chin Chiang hurried along the road by the sea to the public library, which he had visited many times when he wanted to be alone. He opened the door and ran up the stairs, round and round, higher and higher, up, 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 to the door at the top that led out to the roof. From his perch in the sky, he could see the mountains rising above the sea, and below him the animal lanterns, which would glow like tiny stars tonight. Chin Chiang felt happier than he had for many days. I never expected to meet a rabbit on top of this roof, called a strange voice. Chin Chiang turned around quickly. A woman carrying a mop and a pail was coming toward him. I'm not a rabbit, he said shyly. I am Chin Chiang, and he pulled off the lantern. Oh, that is much better, she said. Greetings, Chin Chiang. My name is Puyi. May I enjoy the view with you? She didn't wait for a reply. In a little while, I'll be watching the New Year's parade from here. I used to dance the dragon dance when I was young, but not anymore. My feet are too old, and they are covered with corns. My grandfather dances the dragon's dance, said Chin Chiang, and his corns are as old as yours. Puyi laughed. His old shoes may move his old bones, but my feet will never dance again. A wonderful idea suddenly came to Chin Chiang. What if he had found someone to dance in his place? He would show Puyi his part in the dance right now. No one would see them if they tripped or fell. You can help me practice what my grandfather taught me, he said. Oh, my creaky bones, what a funny sight that will be, said Puyi. You can dance, he told her. Cautiously, Chin Chiang gave a little jump. Puyi jumped too. He shook slowly at first, and she shook too. Next they leaped into the air, landed together, and spun on their heels. Before long, Puyi had forgotten her creaky bones. Then Chin Chiang stumbled and fell. Let's try again, said Puyi, picking him up. While they danced, darkness had crept down slowly from the mountains to the city below. Then, from far off, Chin Chiang heard the lilting tune of pigeons with whistles tied to their tail feathers. They had been set free from their cages in the marketplace and were flying high above the buildings. Chin Chiang knew that this meant the New Year's festival had begun. "We must go, Puyi, we're late," said Chin Chiang. "The pigeons are flying free." "I'm not late," said Puyi. "I'm staying right here." But Chin Chiang pulled her by the hand, and they hurried down the stairs together, round and round, down, down, down to the market street. The sound of firecrackers exploded in their ears while the eager crowd buzzed and hummed. Chin Chiang pushed his way forward, but Puyi pulled back. In the noise and confusion, Chin Chiang let go of her hand, and suddenly he came face to face with the dragon, whose head was wreathed in smoke. "Where have you been, Chin Chiang? I've been sick with worry," called Grandfather Wu in a muffled voice. Chin Chiang did not reply. "Come now, take up the tail before the smoke disappears and everyone can see us." Chin Chiang stood still, his feet frozen to the ground. The clamor of the street grew louder, stinging in his ears. "I can't dance, Grandfather," he said. Grandfather Wu turned away. "You can dance, Chin Chiang. Follow me." "Look, look, here comes the dragon," called Mr. Singh. The crowd sent up a cheer that bounced off the windows and all the doors and into the sky. Chin Chiang was trapped. Slowly he stooped and picked up the tail. Grandfather Wu shook the dragon's head fiercely until Chin Chiang started to kick his heels to the beat of the thundering drum. Then suddenly Chin Chiang stumbled, but instead of falling, he did a quick step and recovered his balance. Excitedly he leaped into the air, and again, and higher again, and as the dance went on, Chin Chiang's feet moved more surely, his steps grew firmer, and his leaps more dancing. Mrs. Lau and Mr. Koo cheered from their market shops while people poured out of their houses onto balconies and sidewalks, filling the streets. High in the sky, flags of fire and falling moons burst into light. They sizzled and sparkled, rocketing straight up and whistling to the ground. Just then, Chin Chiang caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. It was Puyi. Chin Chiang leaped to the sidewalk and pulled her into the street. "I can't, Chin Chiang," she said, pulling away. "My bones, my corns, my knees." "Puyi, yes you can," Chin Chiang assured her. "Look at me." Hesitantly, she took hold of the tail, and together they kicked up their heels just as they had on the rooftop, while the throngs of people cheered them on. Up one street and down another they danced to the beat of the thundering drum. All too soon, the dragon lifted its head and shook its tail for the last time. The dance was over. Puyi hugged Chin Chiang close. Grandfather Wu smiled inside the dragon's head. "Bring your new friend to our home for dinner, Chin Chiang," he said. Puyi and Chin Chiang hopped quickly over the doorstep and into the bake shop. The family exchanged gifts of fine teas in wooden boxes, new clothes, and small red envelopes of lucky money. Then they sat together to share plates of meat dumplings and carp, bowls of steaming soup, and trays of delicious pastries and cakes and fresh fruit. "To Chin Chiang, the very best dragon's tail I have ever seen," said Grandfather Wu, raising his glass in a toast. Chin Chiang's face glowed with pride. "To a prosperous year of the dragon," he said, raising his glass to his mama, papa, grandfather, and to his new friend, Puyi. And then there's a little picture at the end. So you'll you'll have to keep an eye out. Maybe you'll see some people celebrating Chinese New Year soon. Our next story is by a ballerina that you may have heard of if you love to dance, called Misty Copeland, and she wrote this book called Bunheads. She also wrote another book that we might share at a later time too. And so this one's illustrated by Setor Fiadzigeri. And she says, "This is for those who love to dance, who dance because it gives you a voice, power, beauty, hope, and joy. You are all beautiful, and I celebrate everything that makes you unique. To all of my little bunheads, dance your dance and live your dreams." And then the illustrator says, "To my wife Mame for always believing in me, and for my daughter Leo, who always brings me joy." Okay. When Miss Bradley announced they'd be performing the ballet Copiella for the recital, everyone in Misty's class shouted excitedly and gathered around to hear the teacher tell the story of Coppelia. Misty didn't know what Coppelia meant, and she was too shy to ask, especially since it was her first ballet class ever. So Misty took a spot on the floor, and before she knew it, she was completely entranced as Miss Bradley told the tale. Once upon a time, an odd old toy maker made a beautiful life-size doll named Coppelia to cure his lonely heart. The doll was so pretty and looked so real that a boy named Franz fell in love with Coppelia at first sight, even though he'd already told Swanlinda he would marry her. Swanlinda was furious when she caught Franz blowing kisses to Coppelia, but Franz ignored her anger. Later, Franz sneaked into the toymaker's house to see Coppelia, but the toymaker caught him. When the toymaker realized that Franz was in love with his doll, he had an awful idea. Maybe he could use Franz's love to make Coppelia a real girl. Lucky for Franz, Swanlinda had also sneaked into the toymaker's house out of curiosity, and she was still hidden inside. She overheard the toymaker's evil plan and decided to dress like Coppelia to confuse the old man. Once the toymaker believed that his doll had finally come to life, Franz escaped. After that, Franz realized what a fool he'd been, and he married Swanhilda. The two lived happily ever after. Misty loved how Swanhilda never lost sight of her goal or her real love. She knew she wanted to be Swanhilda. "In just a few days we will decide what roles you will dance in the performance," Miss Bradley said. "Now, let's practice." First, there was a développé to tendu front, with the first leg lifted forward, pointed foot gently touching the floor. Next was the rond de jambe to tendu front, with the legs stretched straight out to the front, making big circles round and round in the air with the toes. Then it got a bit harder with the pas de bourrée, moving from side to side, as one foot crossed over the other. They had such fun with the Centenaut as the young dancers twirled and spun in unison. Finally, the lesson ended with the simultaneous pas de bourrée again and again. Misty picked up the steps easily, following only a half second behind the rest of the class. "Have you ever danced Coppelia?" Miss Bradley asked. Misty shook her head, nervously replying, "I've never taken ballet before." "Well, you're very good," Miss Bradley said. "Come," she called to Misty and Kat, a younger girl who was full of energy. "You two, up front." Misty could feel her heart pounding. Miss Bradley asked Kat to show Misty the dance of Coppelia. Coppelia sits in a chair on the balcony of the toymaker's house throughout the first act of the ballet. Kat held her arms in first position, then lifted her arms and turned her head like a robot, up and down and side to side, She performed the moves beautifully. When it was Misty's turn, she imitated Cat from memory. "You are both very gifted," Miss Bradley said. As soon as Misty got home, everything about the new class and the Coppelia fairy tale tumbled out of her. "I'm proud of you," Mommy said. Misty was so excited she could hardly sleep. She lay in bed thinking about the doll coming to life. Misty said her name out loud. Coppelia. It felt magical and full of mystery. The next day, Misty arrived early. Cat was there too, dancing the steps of Swanilda. Oh no, Misty didn't know if she could compete with someone so talented. Soon Miss Bradley arrived. "Do you girls know which part you want to play in the recital?" Misty held her breath as Cat answered, "Coppelia." When the other dancers arrived, filling the studio with laughter, Misty and Cat stayed close, learning from each other. Cat's movements were sharp while Misty's were soft. They tried to copy each other's style until they were giggling. At last, Miss Bradley was ready to audition the dancers to cast the parts that everyone would play in Coppelia. Nearly all hands shot towards the ceiling to audition for Coppelia. Misty was nervous for Cat, but when Cat began to move, Misty knew that no one would be able to outdance her. When it was time to dance the role of Swanilda, Misty was paired with a grinning younger boy named Wolfie, who was portraying Franz. Wolfie was on a mission to catch Misty's attention. The next day, Miss Bradley announced who would play what parts. Misty was excited when Cat got the part of Coppelia, and even happier when she won the part of Swanilda. The next few weeks were full of hard work for Misty. She had to perform both Swanilda and Coppelia when she tricked the toy maker into thinking she was a doll who had come to life. It was a lot to learn. Watching Cat dance her parts with ease made Misty try harder. They inspired each other. The night of the performance, Misty was so excited she couldn't keep still. Staring up at the heavy red curtain, Misty felt a hand on her back. "You okay?" Cat asked. Misty nodded. "I'm ready." And then the curtain was rising up and away. Bright spotlights spilled onto the stage, casting a spell of stillness that would only be broken by movement. In her tutu and braided bodice, Misty pranced onto the stage as Swanilda, with Wolfie playing the part of Franz. At last, lost in the dance, she felt the heat of the lights when she twirled and imagined she could see every face in the room, especially Mom's. Misty smiled, proud of what she, Cat, Wolfie, and all the other dancers had accomplished together. She couldn't wait to see what they would do next. So those are just a few ways that people all over the world enjoy dancing. And if you love dancing, I would love to hear from you about what kind of dance you love and how you like to do that. Maybe there's songs that get you dancing, maybe just when you're feeling happy, maybe when you're feeling sad you like to dance. So I hope that you join us next week. Next week we'll be sharing stories about pancakes and fry bread and baking with people that we love. So until then, I hope that you have a great week and stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.